I have with me John Barnett. He is a leader of a civil rights group called True Healing Under God. True Healing Under God, or Thug Ministry. Thug Ministry. And he's part of the ongoing process there. So he's here to talk to us for a few minutes about this. John, good morning. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Are you a minister, John?
No, I'm not. No, just actually, my title is Brother John Barnett.
Oh, okay. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, yeah. My history, real quick, in 30 seconds. In 1994, my brother was shot in the back by my cousin over an argument over a pair of tennis shoes. In 95, I went to the Million Man March in D.C., and they told us to go home and write one brother in prison. I took it upon myself to write my brother's killer in prison, forgave him, and I created True Healing Under God. That's what I received from reaching out to my brother's killer.
Oh, okay.
That was in 97. So in 2002, I wrote Reverend Sharpton in jail, and he wrote me back, and I worked with him for 6 years. And then when President Barack Obama got in office, I revamped a prison outreach, which is THUG, an acronym, due to my inspirations of Malcolm X, my faith in Christ, and Tupac Shakur, believe it or not. And then now we're full-time in 15 states. We have over 2,000 members, gotten 17 people out of jail and 8 cops fired. And now we're here in Charlotte dealing with, another tragedy.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for the history on it. Did you say that you are a Christian? You believe in God?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
That's correct.
You were interviewed by the Charlotte Observer, and you said, "I do encourage the youth to be controlled, but I can't control them." And NBC Black, you said, "I encourage our young people not to turn to violence, but I do understand why they are upset."
That's correct.
Can you speak a little bit more about why they are upset?
Yes, I think what happens is there's a generation gap, and that generation gap in the middle of it is a word called communication. And I think what we did, we've neglected, I'm 47 years old, but we have neglected our young people. When I was young, even though I grew up with my grandmother, my father was in the home, but my grandmother really taught me a lot of things around the house, to be honest. But there was my uncle next door. There was a pastor at somebody's house because we knew where the pastor was at. And Hill Harper, to break it down, Hill Harper is an actor, CSI actor, who told Monique on the Monique show that in 1976, 70% of black fathers were active in their children's lives. Due to child support and due to the incarceration of black males, 1.9 million men in prison, 1 million black. Just last year in Charlotte, 10,000 black boys were suspended, 2,000 white boys. So because of all of these dynamics of them attacking the man, the strong man of the house, what has happened now is that percentage is down to 31%. So you don't know where the pastor is because you don't have access to the gate of his house. The uncles are dying of, prostate cancer or alcoholism. And so there's not a presence of Afro-American men. And because of that lack of presence, the young black males are running rampant in the street, aimlessly, whether it's being an aspiring rapper or trying to get to the NBA with a messed up knee. But whatever the case may be, we have neglected them. And so what happens is that when we try to encourage the youth, as we did the other night in Marshall Park, we were at the park and we aspired to walk down the street inside the church for a rally of speakers that we had lined up. The youth went a different way. They went downtown, and of course, that resulted in the windows being broken out of Michael Jordan's store. But to those who were 25 or 30 and above and all the ministers, we walked in the church and listened to those speakers. While we were speaking, a young man got shot in the back of the head, we believe by a tear gas bomb from the police.
But they found the gun, so it wasn't by a tear gas. It was about one of the protesters. They found the gun that shot the other protester.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you corrected me on that because I had a young lady that spoke the other night that said the tear gas canister was right beside his head. And so even that case is questionable.
Well,
Such is the case with...
Let me ask, you said I do encourage the youth to be controlled. Can't you be a little more forceful in telling them that? Because it was kind of a timid recommendation rather than telling them the right thing to do with a sense of force, because it appears that you are justifying their anger, and there's no justification to anger toward police officers.
Not at all. Just as I said earlier, I think the reality of that is that as much as we tell the young people to join the NAACP, they lost 13,000 members last year between January and June. So our challenge is, instead of dealing with it from a perspective of just making a general statement to say, hey, youth, you need to calm down, we also have to realize that they are angry. And I think Minister Farrakhan said it best. He said, rage is a terrible thing, but if it's directed in the right direction, it can raise a nation. The young people have the same energy that those in the 60s had. It's just that it's not directed.
What are they angry about?
I think they're angry about the fact that there's, in our hearts, or in their hearts, they feel as though that, for example, George Zimmerman should have went to jail, but he didn't. So the young people feel as though a black life does not matter. Michael Brown, even though he may have challenged the police, they feel as though he should not have been shot 5 times and one in the eyeball.
But if they're angry about that, why are they angry about killing one another and killing other and the blacks around the country who are on a daily basis killing each other? Why are they more angry about that than the thugs who are being killed? Than the thugs who are being killed by police officers and others?
I'm glad you asked that question, and that's probably one of the things that we deal with is all psychological to a certain extent. And what that means is that we were brought over as slaves. So what happens is the slave is taught well. We were brought over here as, I'm sorry?
You said you were brought as slaves?
You are our descendants, our ancestors were brought over here as slaves.
But what does that have to do with these black men and women being out of control, killing each other? That has nothing to do with slavery. That's a lack of moral character.
No, it is. It's a lack of responsibility for parenting. But number one is psychological. So that stemmed down to an issue that we never addressed. We didn't talk about the psychological damage in the 60s.
But
we just passed out the King Holiday.
Instead of bringing up slavery, why don't you deal with the failure of the parents in that these boys' fathers are not around and they're angry at their black mothers and grandmothers for dominating their lives and passing their anger down to them? Why not teach the black mothers who are having these children out of wedlock how to raise their children without being angry?
Well, simply because you can't honor the apple on the tree and hate the root.
What does that mean?
So we have to identify what does that mean. Is that's an analogy that I want to use for you.
But what does that mean? You can't honor the apple on the tree and hate the root. What does that have to do with black women?
Well, if you let me answer psychologically, we cannot just forget all about slavery, that it had no psychological effect on us.
It did not.
So the youth may not be, even though the youth may not have been in slavery, they were in the womb. And that still exists in our DNA.
But now, why didn't we see this type of black...
Since the slave
Let me ask, hold on, John.
All these slave masters, the slave masters taught us these things.
Come
down.
So
a man that can't treat you right can't teach you right.
John, listen. Why didn't we see the black-on-black violence when I was growing up? We were closer to slavery than these young people are today.
But you had parents and uncles, didn't you?
Hold on, John.
You didn't have but there wasn't a million men in prison either, was it?
John,
and it wasn't 10,000 people.
Hey, John, why are you carrying on? Calm down, man. You're not having a conversation.
I'm just saying.
But calm down. You're not having a conversation. You're carrying on, man. Calm down.
Why didn't we calm down? I'm just telling you.
John, calm down.
You didn't really. You had a presence of men around you, didn't you? If you can answer that real quick, if I can interject.
Yes, we
have
have
a presence of men around you. Did you have an uncle, a father, a best friend, a brother?
John,
okay, we don't have those. Those young people don't have those.
So then, why not focus on that since that worked, rather than running around and crying racism from police officers? That doesn't make sense.
That's not racism. You got to realize. They're discriminating and they're violating our civil rights.
No, they're not.
You got to understand. They didn't reach the.
Hold on, John.
Hold on.
Hold on. This man carrying on like a black female. Hold on, John. John, if you know that the problem is due to the lack of fathers in the homes and the anger of the black mothers and grandmothers that they are passing on to their children, why not deal with that rather than going around that?
I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, we've already been dealing with it, staging Black Male Summit, and then also directly going inside the schools. So civil rights and some of the efforts we've been doing with the youth is not just, sitting on a radio show or sending out emails on social media. We have, this Thursday, we're having a forum in Charlotte of 100 men. And what we're going to do is intervene, prayerfully, intercept some of the challenges that the police has been having with the youth.
And
so, for example, I'll give you a visual.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
The youth are breaking out...
John, why are you speaking? You can calm down. It's a conversation. I'm going to give you time. just calm down. Let's have a conversation. You're speaking as though you're trying to speak over me or take over the show. I want to understand
not
what's
at all.
going
I'm actually
on.
answering your question. You
So
asked me a
I
question.
know, but
wanted
you're
to answer
speaking
it.
so fast. We can't have a conversation. Go ahead. Tell us, what do you do with these men at these forums?
Okay, gotcha. That's what I was just getting. As I was saying earlier, we're having a forum. We've devised. We've got together 100 men just this weekend in Charlotte. And for an example, the other night, windows were being busted out by the youth. The youth are not listening to the police for some reason. And you got to realize, whenever you ask a question about the youth, you got to ask, why are they angry? You know, why was those that walked with Medgar Evers and Dr. King angry? Why was Stokely Carmichael angry at Dr. King?
Why are the black youth angry today? What are they angry about?
I think it's a number of reasons. Number one, I think it's a lack of resources for them. And one of the best ways to explain that is the CMS issue we have. We got 10,000 black boys being suspended in schools, 2,000 white, even though the white population takes up a whole lot more, is larger than the black population. So in saying that, because they feel as though even starting at the third grade, they are being challenged in the third grade, just statistic-wise. And because of that, by the time they get to the 12th grade, they have so many punches thrown at them. And that is obvious in the numbers, the 10,000 suspensions, that they tend to feel neglected. They tend to get upset from being neglected.
John,
and then it just trickles down and it festers to something
John,
bigger.
Aren't they first angry at not having moral parents, and so they're angry at that first, and as a result of that, they're acting out in school, they're acting out in the community, they're acting out with the police officers because of their lack of moral character? Why not get them to deal with that so that when they're in school, when they're in the streets, they're not violent and carrying on and acting out?
You know what? That's what we're doing with this mentoring program. I think in New York City, if I'm not mistaken, the Italians have something where they have a school. It's almost like deprogramming the kids over a week, and they have something called Saturday School. So that's what we plan to do here and have already been doing, is working with those youth and letting them know they're being loved by us, letting them know that they can make it despite any of the obstacles that they're obviously going to face. And in saying that, if we're able to just help 5 out of 100 youth, then we've accomplished our goal. Then to not do nothing at all.
But you guys are talking out of both sides of your mouth, because on one hand, you're saying, oh, yeah, you didn't have parents. But on the other hand, you're blaming it on slavery. You're blaming it on so-called racism. You're blaming it on so-called racism. And those,
you can't just say it's one reason. I just told you earlier, it's multiple.
But it's not true. That's not true.
Why do you know it's not true? What is the answer? What is your answer to why the angry youth is there? Why do you think they're busting out windows?
Because they have.
Why do you think they're busting out windows?
Hold on, I'll tell you, John. Because of the lack of moral character due to immoral parents. They had no good parents, so they're acting like no good citizens in the communities.
And I agree with you, but watch this.
But that's the only reason.
I know a pastor's daughter who was uptown Charlotte that had those morals and says yes sir and no sir to me, but she was uptown, wanting to bust out the same windows.
Did she bust out windows? Did she break out windows?
No, she not. She was with the ones that busted out the windows, though.
But then her no good pastor father failed her. Because if she had a good father and a good mother, she wouldn't be uptown breaking out windows or even hanging around with people who were breaking out windows. So her father and her mother failed her.
If there's a mother, you got to realize there's still a breakdown. I told you earlier the numbers.
So
70% Afro-American children had fathers in their lives and some kind of male figure. Today it's down to 30%.
Right.
That's
so
factual.
then, why build on their anger by lying to them about racism? Ain't no such thing as racism. These kids are immoral, rowdy, out of control kids. Why not just deal with that?
If you think racism does not exist, then you just have to talk to me about the T.H.U.G experiment and why Bill Clinton apologized 40 years later. You have to talk to me about how
you're not proving that racism exists.
Racism is prejudice plus power. You got to understand that.
You got all these crazy
sayings. I don't know what bamboozling Negroes you've been talking to, but racism definitely exists in America. Ask these corporate America girls, black girls that called me saying I didn't do anything on the job, and now I'm filing for their wrongful termination this week.
Let me ask you this, John.
So Racism does exist.
No, it doesn't.
The word exists in itself.
The word exists, but the word is a fake word.
If you say racism does exist, then you are very naive to what's really going on out here in these streets.
It doesn't exist.
Totally naive.
No, I'm not.
Where does racism exist at? What, South Africa?
It doesn't exist anywhere. But John, let
no,
me
racism
ask.
exists, Doc. I would not ever sit here and say that racism does not exist in America.
I know.
And you got a black president, and about I don't know, hundreds of men has been shot down by the police since he's been in office. Hundreds.
John, do you know that there are more white men being killed by police officers than black men?
I
Something like 50% more.
We're fighting for one right now.
John, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Hold on. You said it's all about fighting the system and getting rid of these dirty cops who's inside. You got a virus. You need some chemotherapy to get that virus out. What proof is there that there are dirty cops killing these folks? Where's the proof of that?
I'll be glad to give it to you. Now, that's metaphoric language. So let me break that down if you can't read through that. Now, what that means is that in Juneau, Louisiana, 6 boys was faced with a lynching charge for literally a stool fight. And because we had to get, what I mean by breaking down the system is we had to contact the Department of Justice. Myself, Sharpton, and others, we sent petitions to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice came down, and those boys ended up getting 20 months probation instead of 20 years in prison. Now, what if we had not acknowledged the Gina 6 boys? What if I not drove to Charlotte 17 hours to Louisiana? Guess what? They would have been in prison right now for 20 years.
John,
so it's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate
that we had to break down, and we broke that system down through the Department of Justice.
It's unfortunate that this country is allowing itself to be intimidated by race hustlers like Al Sharpton and others. They are not dealing with the real issues that's happening in the black community. They're using black people for personal gain, and they love the fact that not all, but most blacks are brainwashed, dumbed down, and demoralized. So they're using them.
Well, you'd have to ask Sean Bell's wife that when they knocked on Al Sharpton's door, and they were able to later get a settlement.
They went to the race hustlers who was able to intimidate white people.
Yeah, well, whatever the case may be, he should not have been shot down 51 times. That's the problem. Yes, white folks have been shot down in this country, but Sean Bell was shot down 51 times. Jonathan Fell and Charlotte 12 times.
Hold on. One of the things that I wanted to ask my guest about, John Barnett, leader of the civil rights group called the True Healing Under God, better known as Thug Ministry out of Charlotte, North Carolina. He was chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." And hands up, don't shoot never happened. It was a lie. It's been proven that it was a lie. I want to know why he did that. But so you know I'm not deceiving you on this, here is John Barnett chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot" in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hands up. Don't shoot. Hands up. Don't shoot. Hands up. Don't shoot.
Ain't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? A lie. But he ran. He put his tail between his legs. Went to the bottom of the hour break. And while during the break, John hung up. John Barnett of the True Healing Under God, better known as the ministry in Charlotte, North Carolina, hung up on us. And I will have more questions for him. I want to know from him who is financing his organization. Where is he getting the money from to go out and promote hatred amongst young black people and white folks? I want to know why is he calling himself a Christian, but yet lying to the blacks there and telling them it has something to do with slavery and all that crap, rather than just focusing on the failure of the parents of these boys and girls, young and old. I wanted to know those things, but John Barnett hung up. He put his tail between his legs and he ran. I only hope the Bible Go To guys listening, because he's going to love this song. Just let it be known, let it be written, and let it be said that John Barnett hung up My producer tried to get him back. We called him a couple of times. He would not answer his phone. He's such a coward. And I want to make this really clear, and I want it loud and clear, because I want the good citizens of this country, blacks and whites and others, to know that these race hustlers are cowards. They really are cowards. Their foundation is built on lies, on sinking sand, and not to run away from these cowards. Stand up to them with the truth, and they will run. And especially to white folks, you got to start standing up to these race hustlers, these poverty pimps, these that come in the name of God. But when they're Pharisees and liars and hypocrites, they're not of God. And to back down from them is a horrible mistake. Because look, they're always running from me. They can't handle the truth. And John Barnett talking fast and saying nothing. Talking fast. Did he say he was speaking in rhythms or something? Rhymes? Something he called it. Like Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan and Michael L. Dyson and what's that other guy with the dry afro hair? Cornel West. They all talk loud. Jesse Jackson. They talk fast. They speak in what they call rhymes or something. And the blacks whoop and holler, yeah, I love it. And they're saying nothing. All lies, speaking fast so you don't know that they're lying. At some point, good got to stand up and overcome evil. That's how you do it. John Barnett, leader of a civil rights group called the True Healing Under God, better known as Thug Ministry, out of Charlotte, North Carolina, talking about this Keith Scott thing, killing. And the black police chief said the officer who shot Keith Scott shot him. Keith had a gun. He had a gun. The black officer is saying that over and over and over again. We have some soundbites coming up about that. So, if you see John Barnett and he tell you some other story other than admitting he put his tail between his legs and ran, he's lying to you. He ran. This song is for you, John Barnett. Black power. There go John. Is that a movement standing behind me? That's John Barnett. There you go. Running down the road. Running down the road with his tail between his legs. All lies, weak, pathetic person. He said his name is Brother John Barnett. He put his tail between his legs and ran away from Jesse Lee Peterson because he can't handle the truth. The problem in the black community has nothing to do with racism, no such thing as racism. It is due to the lack of good parents. And he mentioned some preacher's daughter down there carrying on too, along with the ones who were looting. He said, well, she didn't loot, but she was there. Her father failed her too. Just because he has the name of a preacher doesn't mean he's a good parent. Look at Jesse Jackson. He got a son in jail, right? Messed up folks and blamed it on slavery. We didn't have slavery. Slavery happened a long time ago. And when I was growing up, black people weren't killing and looting and robbing and carrying on like this because they had parents. Let's go to Robert out of Florida. Robert, good morning, sir. Welcome to the show. What did you think about Barnett running? John Barnett putting his tail between his legs and ran.
I was actually going to give him a little bit of credit, but once I heard, you came back on and I heard he put his tail between his legs, you know, he doesn't even deserve any kind of credit.
What kind of credit were you going to give him?
Just for at least trying to do something, you know, compared to most people who really don't care. At least he tried to do just a little bit, but instead of just blaming it on a lack of moral character, he's also blaming slavery. And listening to that conversation, you know, black people blame slavery on the fact that they're not successful. Why the Jews that were almost exterminated, that millions and millions were, you know, put in the gas chambers and death, look at what they're doing. If they're not involved in everything and almost anything, they're not blaming it on that. And, you know, Black America needs to stop, you know, and I understand why they may be a little bit bitter, but let that go. Let that go and change.
Why do you think they might be a little bit bitter? What do you understand about that?
I mean, I mean, maybe it just, but when you think about it, I mean, I don't know if it would bother me. My people weren't really, I mean, slaves. I mean, I don't know. I guess they can blame a little bit on it.
No, they can't, Robert, not at all. When I was growing up, as you know, I grew up under the Jim Crow laws, and Black Americans were restricted. They didn't blame slavery. They didn't have this hatred in their hearts. They still managed to do very well. Their kids were not out killing white people, raping and robbing and murdering. They were not breaking into stores because they had morals. They lived by what was right. So there's no reason for this guy, John Barnett, is a fake. He's a liar. He worked under Al Sharpton, and he's picked up all the Al Sharpton's ways. How do you go to teach somebody to hate and love? By blaming on slavery, the lack of moral character on slavery, they're teaching blacks to hate.
Correct. And I think he hung up on you because he didn't want to tell you George Soros was probably the one funding his little operation.
Yeah, he was talking fast, and he didn't want to deal with the real issues.
No, not at all. And you know, 70% of the people that were arrested at the protest had out-of-state IDs. These are all communist agitators that George Soros is funding and sending over there. You're telling me 70% of the people arrested at the protest were out of state or had out of state IDs. What does that tell you?
That's right.
That's actually a federal crime to cross state lines to initiate a riot or to assist with rioting. They did that. They passed that in the 60s.
Robert, anyway, this is not about racism. It's not about anything real. These people have hidden agendas, and they're using black people for their own personal gain.